And so this demo, again, is a Platform9 demo account environment. And what I want to demonstrate through this is a couple of points, right? I want you to see how you can, pull together a bunch of your KVM infrastructure and then, run it side by side with VMware vSphere infrastructure and manage all that through this single pane of glass Platform9 interface. Right, so with that, what we have in this demo account is we've got it started with 2 KVM servers. It's paired with 2 KVM hypervisors, and we are in the infrastructure dashboard. And now we're looking at the process for adding your vSphere resources to Platform9. Right, and it's again a very simple process. It's a 3-step process. As a first step, you're going to download the vSphere gateway. Right now, unlike KVM, where you need to deploy an agent per server, with vSphere, you just need to download one appliance and need to power it on within your vSphere infrastructure, right? And because VMware, offers really rich APIs for ESXi servers, so we are able to leverage those. So we, in fact, talk to the vCenter server. We don't talk directly to the ESX servers yet. And so we downloaded the appliance. It's a few hundred megabytes in size. Now I have a vCenter environment which has one cluster running and has some workloads running on it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to import that appliance into this vCenter, right? So we are importing it as an OVF appliance. And once the appliance gets deployed, it's also enabled with the security credentials specific to your Platform9 account, right? So it's going to then use that data to establish a communication with the cloud-based controller. And so we're going to see that in a second. And then, as soon as that happens, then again, using a model that's very similar to KVM model, we use that appliance to discover information about your vCenter environment.
Is that one appliance per vCenter?
Yes.
The question on that is, does it require vCenter? Because a lot of people would adopt, I'm going to go the OpenStack route, I'm going to save myself a bunch of money, not going to buy a vCenter license, just use ESXi in the back end.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a good point, and that's the model we want to go towards. But right now, it does require vCenter. But you can be working with some of the basic licenses with vCenter. You don't need to be at an advanced level.
Will this use anything to do with the VMware integrated OpenStack, or
no? I mean, I would say this is a replacement, or this is an alternative option to that. And in fact, there are a couple of ways in which we give you a better OpenStack experience compared to VIO. But yeah.
What better integration would you an example?
So, for example, we are fundamentally designed to let you work with your existing infrastructure, right? So you might have a vSphere deployment with thousands of VMs running, and you can seamlessly layer Platform9 OpenStack on top, and all those workloads start showing up within your Platform9 environment. And my understanding is that with VMware's integrated OpenStack, you don't have the ability to pull in your existing workloads. So that's one key differentiator. There are differences in the ways in which we work with your templates. We're putting in work to recognize those templates as first-hand citizens as part of your OpenStack cloud.
Okay.
So things like that. And so we finished the deployment of the virtual appliance, and as we go back to the Platform9 dashboard, you will again notice an updated alert. Right? So as we switch to the infrastructure view, you see a new alert pop up, and it tells you, congratulations, you have a new vCenter gateway that's awaiting your authorization. Right? So again, the model is very similar to the KVM model. And so when you hit authorize, here is the point where you give your vCenter credentials, your vCenter username and IP address and password. So we're going to pick that information and feed into the agent to the gateway. And so the gateway then uses that data to communicate with your vCenter, right? It registers with vCenter, and then it starts gathering all the information about your clusters, your ESXi servers, your storage and networking, and everything that you have available within that vCenter environment.
This is another case where agents, certificates, etc., communicating between the vCenter server and the external box.
Correct. Yes. So it's the appliance is the only entity that's communicating with the external box, and then the appliance in turn communicates with your vCenter server.
Now, does this auto discover as new hosts are added, or do I always have to go back to the dashboard like you had in the previous slide and click Add Host?
Yeah. So we don't assume that you want to make every single cluster part of your Platform9 OpenStack. So we want to give you the option of selecting what clusters you want to make part of your Platform9 OpenStack. And so you will be then updating that, that configuration and specifying those clusters.
So your Platform9 talks to your the appliance, the little virtual appliance. Does that then talk to Virtual Center?
Correct. So the model, the way it works is that appliance always talks outbound to the controller, and then the appliance talks inwards to Virtual Center.
Okay, so within your appliance, you must go to some config page and point it to Virtual Center with credentials and...
Right, so we did that here through this authorization process right now.
Was that
so it's not through the appliances page, but you just do it through the dashboard.
Okay.
But the appliance uses that data.
The one concern that a lot of security folks like us in the room will ask the question of, so to manage my vSphere environment, I'm going to an external web page. Does that seem correct?
Well,
it's not me that's concerned, it's my CISO that's concerned for that.
Right. So it is true. Yeah, with Platform9, our model is that you do need to go to an entity that's sitting outside of your infrastructure. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we have various ways of making it secure and protecting it for you, right? And what we do notice with the customer base that we interact with is, for the majority part, it ends up not being an issue as long as we're able to convince them that this is deployed in a very secure way, etc. And we're taking all those precautions.
So architecturally speaking, why did you make that decision? If I can ask, since your services on your side don't even talk to our vCenter servers, they talk to the appliance. The appliance acts as the intermediary. Why do they need them on the outside? I mean, it doesn't even seem like the credentials should ever even leave that VM.
It goes straight to the appliance.
So your vCenter credentials always stay within the appliance. I want to make that part clear. The vCenter credentials.
We put them in right there, didn't we?
Correct. So we entered it, but the cloud controller passes down to the vCenter gateway, and then that's where they're used primarily. And you're right that we can change the model where we can just make the appliance directly take the credentials.
It seems like it would make people less. I'm not going to say paranoid because they're going to be paranoid anyway.
Fearful.
Yeah.
Apprehensive.
Careful.
Right.
If they could just simply point if the appliance was the dashboard.
Good-natured,
that's what you're saying,
trusting
right?
Christopher here, raised questions, I'm sure that other people would too.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point.
I wouldn't see it as a new problem though, because I'm making Platform9 is in control of my infrastructure. So if I'm making that decision, then I'm trusting Platform9 anyway. Whether I trust, are you saying I'm trusting it a little bit more by giving it vCenter credentials?
It's more, why am I putting it there? I mean, like, granted, it's never, I totally believe them when they say they're not actually using it outside of the firewall, right? They're using it on the virtual machine. But it just doesn't make sense to me why I should need to put it there when I can configure this box, which acts as an intermediary anyway, to be the natural security gateway for that information. I don't know. It seems unnecessary.
Well, I would actually go one step further and say, why do I have to run this in the cloud? Why can't I buy an appliance and put it in my network and run it here, and then have some sort of update mechanism where it's more under my control? So I don't have these credentials crossing the internet.
Yeah.
I know a lot of clients are more conservative ones, banks, for example, would not go anywhere near this because it goes out to the internet for control.
And it's all secured, encrypted, PKI certificates, but cryptographic hash attack, certificate gets compromised. Now our credentials are compromised. We've got a big issue. They can crack into our vCenters.
Someone comes into your infrastructure somehow. Now they have control of mine. So, are you interested in that market? Because if you're not, then it's fine.
So can I take that? That's my favorite question. So I think it's fair to say that there are scenarios where you may want a strictly air-gapped environment, and you don't want to, you have like scanners for people coming in and out of badges. This is not for them, okay? But if you're running an appliance and you're letting us update it, I'll go back to your point. You're trusting us. If we are compromised, you can be compromised, even if it's an appliance in your network, because we are updating it.
Well, kind of.
And if I allow automated updates, it could be I do a release.
If you do not
schedule.
allow automated updates,
Yep.
then you've just gone that whole sinkhole of it takes you a year to get a fix. And because it takes you a year to get a version update, because customers hold on to their old versions of software, when you have a problem, vendors say it's going to go in next year's update.
Yeah,
And
I
you
might
just
be
go down that whole rat hole.
I could be okay with that because the value I get from this is all of the administration and dashboards and all of that, which, don't get me wrong, there's lots of value here, and this is not a criticism.
Yeah.
It's more just understanding who you're actually targeting
Yeah,
for
it's a great point. And the point I want to make is we have one of our customers is a very large VMware deployment, probably one of the largest VMware cloud deployments. And he was so frustrated by the fact that there's bugs that I've asked for, it's been years, doesn't get fixed. Why is that? Is that because VMware does not want to treat its customers well? No, it's the model. When you have to support versions of software that are 3 years old, you go down this annual release model, and this version for shipping software is broken, and the world has moved on. And that's why when you use Salesforce, your most critical data in your organization is in the cloud. Okay? So what is more important than your customer and your revenue data? Okay? So the point is, it goes down, you progressively make choices which are worse, and you progressively go down a path where releases and innovation happens so infrequently that ultimately the customer experience is compromised to an extent where that model is just broken. And that's one big reason. Amazon is updating web services. There's a statistic that we've heard where code is going from development source tree to production on Amazon Web Services 30,000 times a day. And are you, as private cloud admins and architects, going to compete with that with software that you're updating once in 2 years? You'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
And I take this as similar to what we were discussing before about do I have the controls and approvals and everything like that. If you're that organization, this is not for you. Because if you haven't got your mind around the idea that, yeah, the developers should be able to turn stuff on when they want it, because that's the way Amazon works.
And if you look at Amazon Web Services,
It has its place.
Yeah.
Okay. And I see this, at least my opinion, this is more for a development test type infrastructure. I mean, I know you said production, but I just have so many concerns and questions regarding implementing this in a production environment.
I will turn that way around to say, for the point of using OpenStack in this kind of environment is you actually are giving all your infrastructures to your developers.
Yes.
Your developers are running their workloads on it. If they mess it up, they mess it up. That's the whole
Right, but
DevOps cycle.
I'm having to manage that, and that puts...
No,
But in a way,
but
it's their
you don't-
responsibility to manage the resources.
You manage the It's like if you go in and delete your AWS instance, Amazon does not care.
Well, I'm talking about the physical resources that I have to manage, right? Because I'm presenting them a pool.
Yes.
I have to manage that pool. So
Yes, you do.
let's say you go out there and you just start deploying VMs left and right.
Yep.
And all of a sudden I see, oh, I got this alert, right? And I'm sure I can probably set it at thresholds, right? So I can say at 80% alert me, so that way I can smack his hand a little bit, right?
Exactly.
So, but that still puts the pressure back on me to have to maintain that.
Well, this is where I'm interested in the reporting and costing, because at the moment you can do that with Amazon, right? You can stand up as many VMs as you like. Amazon will happily take your money. That's the kind of model this becomes. So if you have a group of developers and they want 30 VMs or 700 VMs or whatever, let them have it.
A lot of it's cultural in your company too.
No, I agree.
Well, this is more.
I don't think it should necessarily be like us slapping their hands because they're doing. I think we need to know what they're doing. They need to know what we're doing, what we're capable of, right? Because everybody can do dumb things, us included.
This is more
But I think
or
the
less
security is
us
the
saying,
same thing.
as a
At the moment,
company,
we're saying panic stations. You wouldn't want to have anything managed from having your management plane in the public cloud, but literally give it 5 years, 10 years, all management will be in the public cloud, because why wouldn't you? That's just the way it's going to move forward. So.
You brought up the Meraki
I mean,
model.
is Platform9 going to be looking at PCI compliance or HIPAA compliance or that kind of thing?
I was actually going to come to that. So we want to give you the benefits of what we can do. In this model, our cell phones go off at night when your controller has a problem, even before you know it. It's more work for us. But we want to do that because we think it gives you a better customer experience. Going back to security, we'll be talking more later about some of the features that we have. Access can be locked down to only your networks. Okay? So it's not necessarily available to the big bad world out there. Okay? So we can take care of lifting this management burden for you while addressing compliance, encryption standards, and limiting visibility. So there is, I think, a way by which you can get the best of both worlds. And if you contrast it with using the public cloud, where all of your data is out there in the public, this is still a better model than where you run your infrastructure and you have control on it, you own the policy, you keep your data on-prem. It's just a management fabric that you're leasing as a service, essentially. So that was kind of our perception on this. But I have to say that was a great discussion because it goes down to the core of DevOps. I think the point that you were making is DevOps is a lot about development wanting control and also taking responsibility for their actions. So I think there is a tension. Going back to Imad's point, there is a tension there. I think it's just something the world has to figure out. I think we will, right? It is a natural tension between you wanting to protect them from themselves, but them saying, no, I don't want that, right? I want control. I want the ability to be able to push this out. So I think it's a great tension to have.
One of the challenges that exist in that space is they want the control, they want the responsibility, but they usually don't have the accountability for it.
Correct.
And therefore that falls on infrastructure, so when things go bad, it's his fault.
Correct.
Even though he had nothing to do with it and he couldn't do anything about it, it's still his fault because that's how the accountability chain goes up. And they're just saying, well, we're just going to do what we're going to do. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the moment that transcends from dev test to production operations of services, that's when you've got CIOs cracking down on people, and that's where some of the challenges come in. That's why we're really sensitive around production workloads because
yeah, absolutely. I think that's well understood. So what I would say, here's an example, right? So fundamentally, as a management fabric, we let you make the choices. So you have the freedom to say, maybe it's not the developers who have access to production machines, but it's the admin teams, but maybe junior admins have access to production machines. So you make the choices on who the tenants are, what access they have to what resources, what flavors, and some of the gaps that were mentioned in terms of reporting and audit logs and better visibility and alerts, they're coming. It's not just us. I think the core OpenStack community is also building them, but we're going to be delivering that over time.
Just one final comment on what you're talking about there, Christopher and Imad. None of that is a technology problem. No vendor is going to stand up here and be able to fix that for us because that's a people problem.
It's a people problem.
And it comes back to culture.
And that's what I was going to say. This really looks to me like you're basically saying, okay, I know all of my developers can go to Amazon and do this, but I want to be able to control my developers to be able to offer this same solution and go this route, not have the overhead of implementing OpenStack myself.
Right.
Yeah, I want to be Amazon.
That's right. I want to be
internally.
Amazon,
Yeah.
and I want to do it day
Yeah.
one.
Well,
I want to do it now.
If Enterprise T had actually done this properly, Amazon wouldn't exist.
That's
Amazon
right.
exists. AWS exists because Enterprise IT sucks at this stuff.
Right.
And because
And I think that's really where you guys are going with this.
That's exactly right. And we want to take
what I
that
see
burden. Exactly.
Because I could turn it over today to my developers and
That's right.
have complete control.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
but-
very low overhead.
No, but as we said,
commutes.
it's actually not for base workloads. So I can't remember who coined the term. I really like it. AWS is really cheap to fail in and really expensive to succeed. So you go and test something and you find out, okay, yes, it didn't work, and then you turn it off. That's quite cheap. But running baseload stuff, it's easier to buy your own kit and just run it for 3-4 years down the depreciation cycle.
Yep.
It's actually cheaper than AWS. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cost point is something we come across very often, which is it's very easy for your cost to explode with Amazon if you're not careful with setting your auto-scaling policies or just a basic layer of monitoring, right? And that's one of the core benefits you get with building your in-house infrastructure.
Just a quick question. How
Yeah.
many customers do you have today? And do you also have a community for those customers to feed back to you guys what they want to see in upcoming releases? Because you're quite a new company. How are you doing things with your end users that are using you today?
Yeah, so we're in beta right now, right? So we have about 20 active beta customers or so, and we do have a support portal that we built where we push out some of these detailed articles around how to get started, how to do certain things, how to customize things, and the model that we follow, which we are able to follow right now with a small set of customers, is we give them a very personal, treatment or interaction, right? So any question that comes up not only gets addressed quickly by a personal in the team, but like Shirish was mentioning, we've also built in a lot of automation, right? So just to give you an example, in one of our beta deployments, we noticed that one of their servers was, the health status was down, right? And not only did we get an alert, but we were able to get into it, figure out what the problem was, notice that there was a small bug on our side, fix it, and turn it around and tell them, hey, by the way, we noticed something, it's fixed. And that's the kind of experience we're able to offer with this service model, which is not possible if you had an appliance. And so, okay, so we looked into the pairing of your vSphere infrastructure portion, and once you pair your vSphere gateway, then any ESX clusters that you might have in that vCenter get discovered through that gateway. Right? And they start getting reported as resources through the infrastructure dashboard. And you'll notice that one cluster that we had is being discovered and being reported as a hypervisor. And it's been assigned the role of VMware vSphere cluster, and it's also being assigned the image library role. Right? It's because we're not only going to discover all the workloads that are within your vCenter, but we're also going to look at what templates do you have there, and we're going to pull in that data in your Platform9 cloud. So as this discovery finishes, right, we're getting in all that data from your vCenter and pulling it into Platform9. And the model works very similarly for storage and networking, etc. Right? Any data stores that you might have, we discover them. You have a choice of specifying which data stores within your vCenter you would like to leverage within your Platform9 environment as well. It's very similar for networking too. So we look at your vSwitch configurations and we discover them, and they start being reported as part of your Platform9 dashboard. So it's a very similar, consistent model. Right, and at this point, the discovery is finished. And so now, as we switch into the instances view, we'll see that any workloads that were running on that vCenter are now imported into Platform9. Right, so we're looking at the capacity dashboard and the utilization, and we're getting a quick view into the networking. And we had that one VM network in the vCenter which has been discovered. And then switching to the instances view gives us visibility into all those workloads, right? And from here onwards, you can do any of your regular lifecycle operations. You can start and stop them. We're going to reboot one of these virtual machines here. It's the SQL Server VM. And we're going to issue a reboot command on it, and you'll notice that the instruction then gets relayed through the appliance back to Virtual Center. And so if we switch back to Virtual Center, you'll see that the guest has initiated a reboot there. Right, so this is the model, which is that now that you've paired your vSphere infrastructure with Platform9, you can now give self-service access to your end users or so, and then they can start doing things like deploying their workloads, etc. While the under the hood details of what hypervisor they're going on are kind of abstracted away.
So are the permissions pulled from vCenter for the end user, or do you define the permissions within your?
Right. So we do not pull permissions from vCenter. Just coming from VMware background, we do know the permission model that VMware follows, and it's a fairly complex model, right? So we wanted to keep things really simple. So you add users to Platform9. We are working on things such as AD integration, etc., to make it kind of single sign-on and simple. But then you define roles within Platform9 for those users.
Okay.
And so, you define roles as simple as this is a self-service user, so he should only get the restricted self-service access, or this is an administrator for this tenant, so he should be able to administer the tenant, or etc. And so this is the images view, where we had one template in that vCenter environment, and we discovered it, and it's being reported in this, in our Platform9 image catalog. And so this is majority of what I wanted to cover with this vSphere video. So I'm hoping that it got us a perspective of just how simple we make it to layer in a non-disruptive way Platform9 OpenStack on top of your vSphere infrastructure, and then to manage your KVM and vSphere resources side by side.